No worries.
What was the trip?
I honestly, we don't know. As soon as you logged out, the options seemed to show up for everybody. I didn't change any settings on my side, so I'm not quite sure why it wasn't there. Nothing's been changed on my end as host, so I guess it just really wanted to put us through the ringer.
All right, well, let's get the meeting started. I have 5:41, so we will call this meeting to order at 5:41, Calaveras Council of Governments. Please stand if you can and join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, before we get started into the consent agenda, I have an announcement to make. We are going to conduct the COG meeting all the way up to item number 19. When we get done with item number 18, we're going to adjourn as Council of Governments, and we're going to convene as the CTA. We're going to go through the CTA agenda and finish it off, and then we will adjourn the CTA and come back and reconvene as Calaveras Council of Governments and go into closed session. So that's what we're changing on the agenda today. So when we finish today, we'll be coming out of closed session. Okay? That being said, we will go on to the consent agenda. The consent agenda items are expected to be routine and non-controversial and be acted upon by the council at one time without discussion. Any council member, staff member, or interested parties may request that an item be removed from consent agenda for further discussion. Does any council member wish to remove any of the consent agenda items 1 through 8? Hearing none, is there a staff person 1 through 8? No? Is there any member of the public that may be listening or is on the Zoom meeting wish to pull any item? I'll give it just a minute because sometimes there's a little delay. All right, hearing none, I'm open for a motion for the consent items.
So moved.
I have a motion by Justin. Was that you?
Tim.
John Gomes.
Tim.
Yeah.
And this is Alvin. I'll second it.
I have a motion by Alvin. So we have a motion and a second. Call for
Second.
We'll call for the vote, and the way I'll call for the vote, since we are participating somewhat in a Zoom meeting and somewhat live, I will call for a vote, and then I'll call for a yes, and I'll call for a no. If I hear a no, then I will ask for a roll call vote. If I don't hear any no's, then I'll assume everybody it's a 7-0 vote. But if we do hear a no, we'll go to roll call so we know where the no came from, okay? So I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes 7-0.
Before you go to the next agenda item, the audio is horrible and the majority of us can't hear it.
Gary, why don't you turn that other mic on? Because you keep turning your head when you turn your head.
Okay, I have stereo. How's that? I have one on each side of me. Okay. And Susan's going to turn on the subwoofer here in a minute.
There you go.
Is that better? Okay, we're going to move on to the regular agenda. Item number 9, it's public comment. 5 minutes per person. and comments shall be limited to the items that are within the subject matter jurisdiction of the council and not on the posted agenda. This is Government Code Section 54954.3A. Are there any members of the public that wish to speak? And we'll give it a minute.
It's hard to tell because they haven't started YouTube after mine. But this should not be more than like 5 seconds away.
Aaron, we have no one?
I do not, I have, I'm sorry, fudge, let me go back to my screen. Where are you? Oh, I can't see my participants. I've got 2 phone numbers listed here. One ends in 7222, and one ends in 0809. Are either of you on the line for public comment? I'm not hearing anything from them. I have no other public comments.
Okay, well, no public comments. I will close public comments. We'll move on to item number 10. Item number 10 is a minute order accepting the final San Andreas Pope Street and Safe Route to Schools Gap Fill Plan. Amber,
Okay.
it says you are presenting this.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I am. Can everybody hear me? Tim, if you want to give me a thumbs up if you can hear. Yep. Okay, I see the head nod. I'll try to talk loudly. The San Andreas Pope Street plan was about a product of about a 12-month process. We began this in July of 2019. This was the 3rd grant we received in the same fiscal year in 2017. So this board has recently seen the Valley Springs plan and Angels North Main Street plan, which were recently adopted. So this is the last of those 3 grants. The focus of this plan was studying the feasibility of a multi-use path here in San Andreas along Pope Street and Lewis Avenue between Mount Ranch Road and Main Street, and looking at improvements and access to the elementary school as well. This has been in a lot of our long-range plans for a long time, so this was really an opportunity for us to work with the community and work with the county on really digging deeper and looking at the feasibility of this pathway and where exactly it will go, and preparing it for funding. So, like I said, we worked closely with county planning, public works, the local community here, the residents along this pathway, where the pathway would be, were very involved, so we were excited about their involvement. In the elementary school, the principal, Dan Myers, I'd like to thank him. Him
Your
and his
laptop's
staff
muted and I have no more sound. I'm sorry.
were thoroughly involved.
That is being recorded that way when those guys talk.
Can everybody still hear?
Okay, then we'll make this up.
Did something
Kylie,
happen,
can
Susan,
you
with the sound?
hear me?
No, I just don't know if
She said if you leave the chat up, then it'll be recorded that way.
Okay, we can close the chat, it's fine.
I think they disappeared.
I know, where'd they go, Aaron?
Did we disappear, Aaron?
Yes, we can.
Okay, you can still hear me?
Yes.
Okay, well, now we'll continue. Let's see, this plan was adopted by the County Board of Supervisors this last month. A presentation was provided to the County Planning Commission and the board. And this, like I said, positions the project for funding. And currently we're working with the county on an active transportation program, a grant to fund the core project that came out of this plan. So we're really excited about it. We've gotten a lot of letters of support. Thank you, Supervisor Tofinelli, for your letter to support that grant application. And those applications are due September 15th. But with that, I'll take any questions the council might have. We're just asking for this board's acceptance of the plan as adopted by the Board of Supervisors.
Any questions? Are there any questions by the public? Any public comments?
I have the same two phone numbers. They are not submitting any kind of commentary, so.
Okay. Well, we have no public comments, so I'll bring it back to the board, or council, excuse me. Can I get a motion for this item?
I'll motion.
I have a motion by Justin.
This
Do I have a
is Tim,
second?
I'll second.
Tim, did you second?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So a motion by Justin and a second by Tim. If there's no further discussion, I'll call for the vote. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none opposed, which passes 7-0. Moving on to item number 11. This is a minute order approving the award of a professional service agreement with the Sierra Business Council for greenhouse gas emissions, inventories, and reduction plans for the County of Calaveras and the City of Angels. And Amber, it says presented by you again.
Yes, the transportation planner. As the board may remember, we budgeted funding for this in our 2021 overall work program. This is to support our local agencies in their efforts to establish greenhouse gas inventories and reduction plans, which are both in the city and county general plans and mitigation measures of those plans. We're executing this in two phases. So the first phase are the inventories, which we have funded for this fiscal year. Then we'll execute the second phase, which is the reduction plans in fiscal year 21-22. So we'll include the budget for that in that year's overall work program. So we released an RFP on July 2nd. We received 3 qualified proposals. And we had a review committee of city, county, and COG staff who met and reviewed the proposals based on the criteria in the RFP. And so we're recommending contract award to Sierra Business Council. They're subcontracting with Harris Consulting and Rincon Consulting. And I think I already talked about the phasing. Sierra Business Council is based out of Truckee, and they have extensive experience and knowledge in climate change studies, and specifically these greenhouse gas inventories. So they were a good selection. Council, any questions?
Are there any questions by council members? Someone said, sorry, I can't hear the speaker. Did everybody get everything that she had to say?
This is Alvin. I got everything right up to the very end, so I think I'm good.
Okay.
It's a little difficult, like it was prior to me starting Amber. I've had another person tell me that it's kind of hard to understand you. I'm not sure what the solution would be though, just letting you know.
Okay, well, I'll try speaking directly into the microphone and speaking slower.
Well, we can give you another one like I have too, so. All right, so there's no council questions? Okay, then we'll go to public comments. Are there any public comments on this item? And we'll give it a minute in case there's a delay of it some type. Okay, hearing no public comment, I'll bring it back to the council. I'm open for a motion. Can I get a motion?
This is Alvin. I'll make a motion.
Second.
I have a motion by Alvin, a second by Tim. Call for the vote. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, this item passes 7-0. We'll be moving on to item number 12. Item 12 is a minute order approving state and federal programming amendments to facilitate delivery of the City of Angels State Route 49 sidewalk infill and bike lane project. And again, the spotlight is on Amber.
Thank you, Chair. I am double mic'd now, so hopefully this will help. Okay, this item has a request involves several programming changes necessary to assist the city in delivering the SR 49 sidewalk gap fill project, which is an active transportation program funded project. This project implements elements of the city's Main Street plan that they adopted a few years back, and includes sidewalk infill, bike lanes, and other traffic calming features such as sidewalk buffers. This project is located in 2 locations on State Route 49, on the west side between State Route 4 and Stockton Road, and on the east side between Stanislaus Avenue and Bragg Street in Angels Camp. The COG previously funded approximately $400,000 in CMAQ funds for environmental and design of this project that has been completed. And then in 2017, the city was awarded $1.9 million in the statewide Active Transportation Program, or ATP, funds from the SB1 augmentation portion of that for right-of-way and construction. And so the city has completed right-of-way of this project. The city went out and received construction bids in August, and the lowest bid was higher than their engineer's estimate. So the city needs about $450,000 additional to deliver this project to cover shortfall in construction management, and inspection, the construction contract, and contingencies. So we worked with the city COG staff on trying to identify some solutions. We looked at the 3 construction projects they had going on and found an opportunity to shift some funds around and while still being able to deliver each project. So we're requesting that funds be moved from the Murphy's Grade Road project, $450,000 of state regional surface transportation program funds. The reason we're doing so much shuffling is the ATP project is not federalized. So we need to keep state funding on the ATP project. So we're moving federal funding from Murphy's Grade Road. Moving federal funding to Murphy's Grade Road in order to move state funding from Murphy's Grade Road to the Highway 49 project. So to cover the loss in RSTP for the Murphy's Grade Road project, we're recommending programming highway improvement program funds of $226,000 from the Main Street Historic District project to Murphy's Grade Road, because Murphy's Grade Road is already a federalized project. We're also recommending programming unprogrammed federal fiscal year 20 highway improvement program funds of $48,000 to Murphy's Grade Road. So we received notification in May that we are being allocated $48,000 of these HIP funds. And the HIP funds is kind of a unique federal funding pot that showed up a couple years back through the appropriations process. So it wasn't included in the FAST Act. It's not, in our authorization bill. So it's not something we can depend on or plan for. So we don't know that it's happening until they do the appropriations. So each year we've gotten kind of a random amount. One year we got $226,000, and one year we got $48,000. So when we received that, there was just an opportunity to put it on a project that had a funding shortfall, and that was already federalized. And then we also requesting toll credits for non-federal match on Murphy's Grade Road project. So all of this would allow the city to deliver the sidewalk 8 project on Highway 49. One thing I failed to mention just now is the opportunity to move the funds off of the historic Main Street project, which is a project essentially from almost Stockton Road down to Utica Park, and then down to the historic Main Street district of Angels Camp. We had an opportunity to work with Caltrans. They have a current sidewalk, an ADA project on 49 for a shop project. So it's an ADA upgrade project, and they're including sidewalk gap fills. They had an opportunity to apply to the state for additional funding for that project to include portions of the Main Street project that the city was going to try and fund. So that was an opportunity, and Caltrans is confident they're going to get that funding to add this portion or this element to their project, so they'll be able to fund that through construction. And we only had funding for PE for that project. So this all kind of timed out just right. So this action was supported by the Technical Advisory Committee and county staff. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Are there any council questions on this item? Alvin, you don't have a question?
No question. We went over this last night, and it's basically just shifting some funds around that'll help us complete some projects that have been on the books for quite a while. So, no, but I'm good. Thank you, Gary.
Any other council members, comments, questions? Seeing none, we'll open up the public comment. Is there any public comment? Item number 12. Hearing no public comment, I'll bring it back to the council. I'm open for a motion on this item.
This is Alvin. I'll make a motion.
I have a motion by Alvin,
Second.
second by Tim. Call for a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? None opposed, so passes 7-0. The next item is 13, and it's an informational item, so it's not an action item. It's a county quarterly report, and we have one page in our agenda packet. And I don't know if Josh is on. Is Josh on the line?
He was.
I'm here.
Hi, Josh.
Hi there. Good evening. Good evening, members of the board. My name is Joshua Pack. I'm the Director of Public Works for Calaveras County, and I'm pleased to present an update on programming identified and projects being delivered by the county. The first two projects are essentially complete. The first one, we were able to receive federal funding, and as a result, we'll be reprogramming that here in the future. The O'Byrne's Ferry project has been complete. The Board of Supervisors has issued a notice of completion, and we'll be wrapping that project up just as far as the last paperwork pieces here in a short time. The next project, the San Andreas State Route 49 Gateway and Corridor project. That project the plan of that is to prepare a project study report so that the project can be eligible for future funding at the state level. That draft project study report, or PSR, is essentially complete. It is being reviewed currently internally by Caltrans, the COG, and Calaveras County staff. Based on comments and feedback, that will be revised and finalized. It is my hope, and I haven't talked specifically with Amber with this, but the consultant who's delivering that project is scoped to provide presentations both to, I believe, the Board of Supervisors and the COG. We have tentatively scheduled a November date for the Board of Supervisors to discuss the alternatives and cost estimates for that project with the Board of Supervisors. So stay tuned on that, but that project is close to being complete. And again, the goal of that is not to deliver a project, but to make that project scope and identify that project to the point where we can aggressively pursue alternative funding options. The next project is the Highway 4 Wagon Trail Realignment project. For those of you who aren't totally familiar, the county has assumed the right-of-way acquisition process for this project. We have 7 acquisitions necessary with 7 property owners. We have successfully negotiated and entered into an agreement with 1 property owner so far. We continue to work with 6 other property owners. Those negotiations are going well so far. They're fruitful. We're seeing comments and feedback, with those property owners. I do plan to bring this item as a closed session item to the Board of Supervisors next week for further discussion. However, we are making progress. We do realize that there is a hard deadline for this project to be adopted by the CTC in order to be eligible for funding. That schedule is June of next year, so we have to be very aggressive in continuing to bird dog this project to make sure we can get this right-of-way done in time to make sure it secures the funding for construction here shortly. Otherwise, though, that project is doing well and progressing, and the design portion of it is progressing well. The next project is the Highway 49 Mountain Ranch Intersection Road Improvement and Government Center Bikeway project. That project actually begins construction next week. So starting on Tuesday, Monday's a holiday, we'll be having our beginning field meetings to discuss issues and concerns. Probably the first week or so we'll be mobilizing and preparing for construction. I believe actual construction activity and delays to the public will likely start the following week, which will push it approximately September 14th or so. So we're excited about getting that project started. We anticipate that project being done probably in November of 2020. The last project on here is the Valley Springs School Safety Improvement Project. That project has not begun. We are waiting for one of the goals that I have, and I'll be working with your COG director on this, is once the Mountain Ranch Road project is complete, to begin consolidating the projects in this CIP program. If there are any additional funding left over, to potentially look to reassign or reallocate funding to the Valley Springs project. The hope is utilizing the report prepared with cooperation of the COG. The recent study is to utilize that study in this funding to springboard into a design project to potentially identify a project for construction in hopefully 2024. The county has allocated about $850,000 for a future project. Now that is allocated primarily for paving, but we are looking at some other funding sources as well to potentially provide a funding pot or at least a baseline to do some improvements in that neighborhood. So I'm excited about that project. We have a very busy 2020 construction season, and the hope is to get through the 2020 construction season, and then once things start calming down in November, to begin looking at issuing a request for proposals for this project. So as I mentioned, to close it out, we've had a lot on our plate in my last year and a half. A lot of the projects on this have been completed or knocked off. I am looking, hopefully, with the COGS and the tax cooperation, to bring an item to this board either late this year or early next year to look to reallocate any remaining funding to the projects that still remain on the list. So as always, I appreciate the relationship with the COG, and I'm available to answer any questions that the board may have.
Any council questions? Council questions? I have some questions. Mountain Ranch Road project. Is there bridge work scheduled for that project on either of the two bridges that are on that road?
No, there's not. That bridge, and it's not necessarily a bridge. I believe it's a box culvert. That bridge that's located to the, I would say, east of the Mark Twain Hospital. There is no plans for improvements there. We were acutely aware of a lot of issues if we looked to expand the project to that site, in particular with cultural resources. As a result, that project scope starts at Highway 49 and it ends at Government Center Road and the entrance to the Government Center in Mark Twain. The improvements at that location include improved sidewalks as well as rectangular rapid flashing beacons to improve pedestrian connectivity. And the project will also pave portions of the Government Extension Road that ties between the Sheriff's Office and the main campus. That work will be done. But no, this does not extend in that gap from basically from the Mark Twain and from the County Road east to essentially that Government Center Road and Calaveras Road. So that we will not be touching that part as part of this project.
Is there not, so that there is a bridge between Government Center and Mark Twain Hospital just to the east, Is that the bridge you were talking about that's not going to have any improvements? Because at one time, there was discussion about some improvements needed on that bridge. But you're saying
Yeah,
no.
yeah, this project does not include improvements there. Now, I do want to highlight also, though, that while we're not touching that location, and I'll be honest, I wasn't aware it's a bridge. I think it's a culvert. I could be wrong on that. I'll go back and verify. However, I do want to highlight that the county has another project starting early next week to resurface Mountain Ranch Road from the government center, from where this project ends up, all the way through to Railroad Flat Road and beyond. So the project timing is really close together. The public's probably not going to recognize that they're two separate jobs, but in reality, the road surface there, the improvements that stop with this project will be continued through our Butte Fire PG&E Settlement Fund project, and will extend all the way through to Railroad Flat Road.
Okay. And there was talk, and there were supposed to be street lights being installed from Calaveras Road all the way to Highway 49, and the light poles were supposed to match what's on Jeff Tuttle. Is that part of this project also?
I'm sorry, Supervisor. Most of the audio was garbled. I did not catch that question.
As part of this project originally, there was supposed to be street lighting installed for these improvements from Calaveras Road all the way to Highway 49. Are there any street lights going to be installed in this portion of the project that you're speaking of?
No, currently there's not, and one of the reasons for that is, and I'm not familiar with the section between Calaveras and Mark Twain. I was familiar in an earlier phase. We had considered extending the decorative streetlights from Mark Twain onto Highway 49, and the reason we did not continue with that was because there was concerns that that particular element of the project could delay the project beyond this fiscal year. And so with those concerns, we did decide to move forward, pulling those out of the project. There were some project funding concerns as well, but primarily concerns that the electrical portion of that, and especially some of the turnaround times with Pacific Gas and Electric for the review of that, could jeopardize the ability to deliver this project in 2020. So this project, that particular element was delayed. There is continuing to be continuing a PG&E Rule 28 underground project in this area.
That was my next question. The Rule 20 funding for underground, all of that overhead.
That project is still in place, and so we don't have assurances from PG&E if or when that will be completed. If that is, though, I did not want to delay this project to do an underground project that did not have a definitive timeline. And so this project, the Mountain Ranch Road project, will be done first, and then the Rule 28 program will come in at a later date. And the hope is if that comes in the next couple of years, it may have some impacts on the road surface. We will include a complete road resurfacing with the project in order to create a uniform road surface, likely through a microsurface or slurry seal. However, I did not want to hamstring or hold this project hostage with another project with an uncertain time frame or future. So the decision was made to move forward with the Mountain Ranch Road project and deliver the Rule 28 project at a later date.
Okay, I'll meet with you later in the week. There's a couple other things I want to discuss about the project with you to make sure that we're all on the same page. But certainly I understand you not want to delay the project. It's been delayed for many years to begin with, so let's move forward on it.
Thank you, and we start next Tuesday.
I have a question.
Yes, Amanda.
And I haven't figured out how to raise my hand. Anyway, can you explain what the Rule 28 is?
Yeah, that's a great question. I apologize for not being more clear. So the Cliffs Note version of Rule 28 is PG&E has a set aside each year for communities, counties, and cities to be able to pursue utility underground projects in their communities, in their community areas. And so There are some guidelines and some restrictions in the program. The county does have a fairly robust pot of money that can be utilized, and so it was primarily identified for beautification and safety in urban areas. I will express my interest. In recent years, there's been a discussion at the state level to potentially allow the use of Rule 20A funds for other uses, including emergency ingress and egress relating to secondary fire access roads. That's something that I'm personally interested in. I think we may need to pull the board at a later date on the interest of utilizing that. But to make a short story long, it's a set aside that PG&E does that allows communities to underground utilities in community areas.
And if I could just add just a little bit to that, yeah, it's meant to take all the overhead, when you do a project, all the overhead lines and put them underground. But you have to identify projects. It's just not a big pot of money sitting there, and we have identified about 6 projects for that money to be allocated to, but there is some free money that we haven't done in years because it adds up that needs to be allocated, and it could be used for, and I'll be advocating for the Valley Springs project and relocating all that overhead underground. So, but basically that's what it is, and the city should have funds, some Rule 20A funds available to them. So hopefully that answers, and thank you, Josh, I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Any public comments or questions on this item?
Yeah, can I just take this opportunity, Chair, to thank and commend Josh and the county and the city. I'll take this opportunity for the city too, on project delivery. I mean, this is tremendous progress. I think over 2 years ago, you know, the COG board kept seeing these progress reports say 0% or 2%. And just in the last year, they have just jumped. And like Josh said, and you'll see at the city, I mean, we're delivering projects, you know, a lot of projects coming up this year and next year. So I just want to thank the county leadership, the city leadership, and city and county staff. It's been great to work with them, and TAC meetings are a lot smoother these days.
And I want to echo that too, Josh, and thank you for your help over the past week on the Burson Road project. I had many people complaining to me about what was happening, and they didn't know, and I really didn't know, but you stepped right in, and I appreciate it. Thank you so much. That project is just about done. I think they have to finish painting the stripes on it, but it's a very good project, and thank you very much for all your help and what you did there. And I think, Dennis, you have a comment?
Well, I was going to echo what everybody has said, and that is there's a lot of, you remember we used to have somebody as a regular here doing public comment about you're not getting anything done, you're not getting anything done. And it was quite tiresome to hear that after a while. But the point is that the projects now are being delivered. It's phenomenal to watch it happen. How quickly they moved through Vallecito was almost like people didn't realize that they're done. So, Josh, that was pretty spectacular to watch those guys work. And I did stop. I didn't have time to get them all water, but I did stop and compliment them for their speed and their timeliness of doing what they were doing. So, great job.
Thank you.
Aaron, did we have any public comments on this item?
Not that I'm aware of at this time, no. I've got 3 phone numbers signed in. I know 7222. I also have a 7234 and a 0809. 7222 is just listening. It's Jennifer Maxwell. I am not sure about the other 2, but they are not offering anything, so.
Okay, if there's no public comments. Again, thank you, Josh. Tremendous job for you and your staff. Thank them for us, please. Thank you. Okay, moving on to item number 14. This is a city quarterly report. And it's a report only, and we have a 1-page item in our agenda packet. we have someone from the city to present this?
This is Alvin. I think Jennifer was going to do that.
Yes, I'm sorry. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, we can, Jennifer.
Okay. Hello. Just to go through this project, this Angels Creek Bike and Pedestrian Network project is the trail project. And that is an environmental. We are progressing on the environmental study. The collector road striping and sign replacement. Kind of taking a backseat a little bit for now to get the two other projects out, and then we'll pick that one up as soon as the construction starts on the other two projects. Main Street project will be hopefully absorbed into Cta Transit EDA project. Since we're moving the funds, Lucas Grade Road, it's ready for construction. We have to wait till the new fiscal year to be able to utilize the 21-22 money and 2021 money. So we've submitted the RFA for construction for that, so we have to wait till the new fiscal year. So like that will go out to construction. And then, as you heard, that Resurfacing sidewalk capital project is awarded as of tonight with your pending approval. The contractor wants to get started on that at the end of this month. Do about half of it, winterize it, and then come back in the spring and finish the second half. It's very exciting. Thank you for your support.
Is there any council questions? No council questions? Okay. Is there any public comments on this item?
No public comment at this time, I don't think.
No public comment. Okay, well, thank you, Jennifer. And we'll move on then to item number 15. And it's the transit quarterly report.
I can report on behalf.
This is Amber, you're reporting on the CTA report?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Thank you. There's two projects listed here, remaining projects for the PT-MISCA program. The first one, the bus stop improvement project. There were a couple remaining bus stops that we had planned, and actually just recently we've been coordinating with Caltrans and the county on two construction projects that will actually cover construction of those bus shelters. The first is on State Route 49 in front of Bret Harte High School. We've had a long time need for a bus shelter there, so Caltrans 88 project will build the pad for the bus shelter, and then we already have purchased the prefab shelters that we'll put in that location. The second one is the county is doing their Mountain Ranch Road project that they just updated on. They also are going to provide a location for our bus shelter there. So those are really positive and gives us a little bit of more flexibility with the remaining funds on that to put towards potentially other projects. One is a facility generator, and then the other, we have a need for shelter upgrades for our solar lighting. So there's some batteries that have been going out and the solar lights that need replacing. So we plan on using some of that remaining funding for that project as well. The second project is purchasing 3 new buses. We've already purchased 2. Those are on the road right now. The remaining bus was going to be replacement in one of our larger vehicles. We now are proposing replacing 1 bus with 2 smaller vehicles. Now that we're doing more dial-a-ride on-demand services, smaller vehicles will give us a little bit more flexibility to navigate through West Point area and Copperopolis for those services. So that's the remaining capital projects here under the PT-MISCA program.
Is there any council questions on this item? I do have a question. we haven't, are we gonna use all of this $375,000 for buses?
Yes, 210,000 has already been utilized, so there was
That would be
100.
That would be 105 each, and 375, we would be at 115,000 with about 50,000 left in that fund. Is that correct? Am I adding
No,
that right?
the plan was, those Freightliners are almost double what
Oh,
the
okay.
little cutaways
Okay.
are. So that remaining amount was going to go towards just replacing one of the larger vehicles.
Well, the reason I bring it up is since we're going to smaller vehicles, and I don't know if we have a charging station at the bus terminal that we use, that we could go to all electric and start trying to meet our goals.
Yeah, so actually, we've been looking at that, and I got some estimates on replacing like vehicles with electric vehicles, and right now for our type of vehicles, it's almost nearly double the cost for electric, but I'm happy to, entertain that, and I think that's a good discussion to have with the board is when we start, when do we start transitioning and testing this technology out up here. The issues that I've been hearing in rural mountainous terrains and areas that have actually cold weather, I guess, drains the electric vehicles more because, heat combustion engines usually can heat the vehicle, but then electric vehicles, you need the electricity to heat the engine. So there's just a lot of range issues and concerns, and we have really long routes up here.
And I understand that, but if we're going to do a route from here to Mountain Ranch and back or so forth, or from here to Valley Springs, those are short enough runs, I think, and it's not really a great mountain, it's going uphill and so forth, that we could use probably smaller vans for those type of things. And it would play into one of our previous items here on the greenhouse gas plan, that we could show and get credits for that. At least we're going down that road. Dennis, I think you have
I was going to make a comment because I've been following this fairly closely, is that the battery technology, it's good that we've delayed, is probably will double in capacity here very shortly. So when that happens, with the newest technologies coming out, your range will almost double as well. So I would hang on for another probably 6 months, a little bit longer than that, and then you'll start to see even Tesla and others starting to get into that market, because Ford and Chevy and the rest of them are also wanting to be in that market. And doing that has forced the technology to be substantially improved. And batteries is the big cost anyway on these vehicles.
Correct.
But when we can get the cost of that vehicle to be somewhat equal to the cost of a standard vehicle, then all of a sudden things start to make sense. Right now, you're right, it's double to get it done, so.
Right, and I've been talking with a lot of different transit agencies, and some, like you said, are waiting, till the technology just jumps another level, but then some, like Gary is discussing, are just easing into it. They're purchasing one and getting a charging, and then testing the waters that way. So we can try to strike a balance maybe moving forward with our vehicle purchases. And actually, through our short-range transit plan, we did a little bit of analysis of zero-emission buses. So maybe when Cliff Chambers is on the line, we can talk about that with him, and that be a part of our fleet replacement discussion in terms of, okay, when do we start kind of folding in those electric vehicles? Because then the larger issue is once you start converting the whole fleet, then you've got, a lot more infrastructure to be concerned about. But I do appreciate.
Yeah.
I'd kind of wait till the
Gary's
spring of 2021 before you really make a move, because you're going to start to see
It'll
some
be
changes.
that long before we would probably be ready anyway, because we have to put in charging stations and maybe Mountain Ranch, if we needed one, Senders might be available to let us put a charging station in there, and at certain points in Valley Springs at the Terrace Shopping Center or whatever, just so we have charging stations if they're needed. But I think that if we're doing smaller vehicles and we're doing certain routes, just to get started in it and start working out from there, would be to our benefit to reach the goal of all electric at some point, whether we reach that goal when we're supposed to or not, but at least in our report, in our plan, our greenhouse reduction, gases reduction plan, it should be noted in there, and that we're moving forward on it. That's why I'm bringing it up now.
And the concern would be, is any new technology going to be backwards compatible? So that if you lock into a specific voltage range or whatever, that you're not locked into that particular design.
Right.
But then, you know, Amber would probably want all Tesla buses. So.
Mercedes.
Mercedes buses. Is there any other comment, any other council comments on this conversation we have going here?
Yeah, I'm glad that we're starting to talk about the alternative vehicles here, and infrastructure is going to be paramount to this whole situation so that things can be accommodated. But I'm glad that we're moving on with this and it's being discussed.
So
I'm in favor of this.
I'm happy to bring this back for the board's consideration. I'll bring a fleet replacement schedule and bring those options.
Yeah, I'm for that. Okay. Moving on to item number 16, it's the Caltrans report. We have someone from Caltrans on the line.
Yes, this is Dennis Agar. Can you hear me?
Yes. Hi, Dennis.
Okay, hello. Good evening, Chair, and rest of the council members, Executive Director Collins, and the rest of the board members and staff. Dennis Agar, Interim District 10 Director, and so I'm actually happy to be here this evening to join your council board meeting and to hear a lot of the great progress you guys have all been making. As you all know, the previous district director has moved on to bigger and better things, and I was asked to come down and sit in as an interim, and I've been in the job now for about a month, about 4 weeks. And it's been exciting to come back to District 10. For those who do know me from previously, prior to Dan McElhenney, I was actually the District 10 director for about four and a half years prior to that. I just came back from headquarters in Caltrans in the Sacramento office. I was actually the division chief for maintenance programs statewide, managing a large budget and, of course, a large staff across the state. But I'm happy to be back here in District 10, and hopefully we'll get a permanent person here on board in this position. And just to be transparent, I'm hoping to be one of those, be that person to be permanent back here in District 10. I do have a couple other staff with me this evening, and which I will introduce here shortly. But I would like to ask if anyone has received the letter that I sent this afternoon. I apologize it was so late, trying to get the information to all of you before this meeting. Could I ask if any of you or all of you have received my letter with status updates?
I did. Justin,
okay, good.
Yeah, I did, and thank you so much for that letter, Dennis. Very informative. It gives us right up to date everything that's going on in the county. Very informative. Thank you so much for it.
Yes, I'm glad you find that information valuable. This is something I know that Dan was working hard on and trying to be more transparent on everything that's going on in our system with all our partners, especially in your county. As you notice in the letter, just to kind of highlight a couple things, we are working on a lot of things on the maintenance, preparing for the winter that's up and coming. We are really, cleaning out our culverts, our ditches, working on sweeping operations and other maintenance activities so that we are all prepared for the upcoming winter. One of the things that in the bullet under the maintenance side of the house, I do want to highlight and maybe ask for some help is that we are actually advertising for more hires in our yards up in the Calaveras County area. And you'll see that in the last bullet that was sent over in that letter. And any information that you can share out there for folks who are looking for jobs and working with us, we would appreciate as much as applicants we can get to help support us through the winter season. So I do want to point that out, and that's going to be at our Camp Connell office, Altaville, West Point, and all those yards as well. So hopefully you guys caught that. We also are working hard in each specific locations. That's the other portion of the letter that talks about our operations and safety investigations on areas of the citizens' communities' concerns. And we wanted to make sure we gave updates on what we're trying to do to be proactive and improve the safety in these locations. So hopefully you find that informative. And again, we are very focused on the safety of all our communities that are considered main streets in our highways. The other thing is the projects, capital projects. I really appreciate the partnership we've had over the many years together with Caltrans and CalCog and your executive board here in delivering a lot of important projects in your areas. I know that I've been in contact a couple times already with Amber. She's brought to my attention some of those important projects and some of the things that we need to work together to get through the challenges and deliver these projects. So definitely look forward again to working with Amber, your CalCog office here at Council of Governments, and look forward to, again, more successes, in not just now, but hopefully more years to come. And again, hopefully that I'm successful in competing for my old job and, again, working with all of you. With that, I want to introduce who you already know, Gregoria Ponce, and she's our now acting Deputy District Director for Planning, Local Assistance, and Environmental Support. As you know, she's taken over Ken Baxter's position since he's retired. And I wanted to make sure she had an opportunity to give other updates that she had planned and also introduce one of our other staff as well. And then, of course, at the end, if you have any questions for me, Gregoria, and my other staff member, we'll be happy to answer them as they come. So, Gregoria, are you online, first of all?
Yes, good evening.
Okay.
Thank you. This is Gregoria Ponce. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
We can hear you.
Great. As Dennis stated, I have the pleasure and honor of serving as the acting Deputy District Director for Planning, Local Assistance, and Environmental in District 10. We have several items to present as well, and I also wanted to introduce a new team member. I wanted to introduce Mr. Kevin Schroeder in his new role. He is now serving as the acting office chief for the Office of Rural Planning, and I'd be happy to hand it over to Kevin. And Kevin, if you'd like to share on that.
How's it going, board? Kevin Schroeder. I think we maybe met last meeting, but that's not. I've been with the district for 5 years. I've actually had the pleasure of working with Calaveras for those 5 years now. I'm just transitioning over to all the 5 rural counties. So if you ever need anything, please feel free to reach out to my office. I have 2 staff members right now working in other counties, but I'm still working under Calaveras. So I'm quite aware of all the projects and good relations with Amber and Josh and anyone else that needs something from Caltrans. So thank you for your time.
Thank you. Thank both of you.
So with that, I wanted to follow up on the items that I wanted to share with you. We currently have the California Transportation Plan, the CTP 2050. It's now released for public comment and circulation at www.ctp2050.com. The CTP serves as the state long-range transportation plan. It creates the vision and serves as the framework to articulate strategic goals, policies, and recommendations to improve mobility, accessibility, help improve housing, combat climate change through GHG reduction and adaptation planning strategies. Caltrans, through its various media platforms, has sent this out, and I believe this was also sent out directly to our partners. We look forward to hearing your thoughts and capturing your comments on the plan that's currently available for public comment. The next item I wanted to share on was the Highway Safety Improvement Program, Cycle 10 Call for Projects, the HSIP. So the submission deadline extended to October 19th from July 30th by the Caltrans Division of Local Assistance. It had been extended due to the COVID-19 pandemic. For more information, please reach out to www.dot.ca.gov, programs, local assistance. And you'll find more information there with regards to the extension. Caltrans did adopt a statewide action plan to increase walking and biking through its active transportation action plan, and it's highlighting continued measures Caltrans is taking to improve walking, biking, and transit options statewide. We think this emphasis for equity and multimodality go hand in hand with our transportation for all philosophy of building and maintaining a system that works for everyone. And it's also, it also represents a significant funding commitment to integrating bike and ped improvements, which was included in our 2020 SHOP as part of a $100 million reservation specifically for complete streets. Moving from there, we have the 2021 Interregional Transportation Strategic Plan update. The ITSP, the update is now resuming with the completion of the California Freight Mobility Plan. The upcoming completion of the plan is as follows. We have community and stakeholder engagement. That'll commence in fall 2020. The draft ITSP we anticipate releasing in the winter of 2020 with a public review period following in winter 2020 through early 2021 with the final ITSP published in March of 2021. The ITSP, it provides direction to the ITIP by prioritizing highways designated as interregional road systems and intercity rail facilities. We'll be sending information with workshops that'll be set up in the coming months, and we look forward to working with our partners. Moving forward from that, we have the California Transportation Commission and its call for Cycle 5 Active Transportation Program Call for Projects under its new deadline of September 15th, which is just around the corner. And we do have one project moving forward. Total funding available for the overall program was $440 million. We also wanted to share that the California Freight Mobility Plan 2020 is available. It is online with the vision emphasizing economy, vitality, environmental sustainability, and social equity. It identifies 7 goals created through extensive research of economic prosperity, environmental stewardship, healthy communities, safety and resiliency, asset management, connectivity and accessibility, and multimodal mobility. And the full plan is available at California Freight Mobility Plan 2020. For the overall work program, we continue to work with our partners on supporting OWP. We processed fourth quarter invoices, and again, we continue to look forward to successful partnering. At this time, I have no other items. If anyone has any questions.
Dennis, you have a question?
Yes, I do. Well, first a comment. Dennis, thank you for the work that you're going to be doing here very shortly in Murphy's on State Route 4 around Pennsylvania Gulch Road. I know that's been very important, very timely to get that project done. Secondly, there was a lighting project that was, I think it's in the program for 2021 at Highway 4 and Parrott's Ferry. I'd like to be sure that that doesn't drop off the radar screen due to the accident rate that we've been seeing there over the years. And the third thing is, do you think this is going to be a wet year or dry year?
This is Dennis. Thank thank you for your comments, and definitely will make sure that we always keep these projects on progress and not fall off the radar, as you stated. I don't have the best prediction on what we're going to see this coming winter. We do get reports from the National Weather System to help predict us as early as or as accurate as we can, even down to the hour. But looking ahead, we do work closely with the National Weather Centers across the state to make sure that we are planning ahead of future events. So we do our best in that. And again, I can't predict the future this coming winter, but we're hoping for a good winter to come.
Thank you so much.
Are there any other council comments? None? Justin, nothing? No? All right, well, thank you, Dennis, Kevin, and Gregoria. And thank you again for the letter, bringing us up to date on everything going on with Caltrans in Calaveras County. It's great. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much, and thank you for the time.
All right, we will move on to item number 17. This is council reports. Does any council member have anything to report? Dennis?
Well, I got some pictures of a single tree bridge, and it's phasing in, so to speak, and I know that Mr. Pack's been working very hard to try to get that thing done. So very thankful for the work that that's been going forward on that project.
Any Amanda have anything to say? No? Okay, I don't have anything to report. So we'll move on to item number 18, staff reports. Executive Director's report, and we have a copy in our agenda packet, and it's quite extensive.
Yes. Thank you, Chair. As usual, I've just provided an update on all of our planning projects and other issues and projects that we're following. Just wanted to highlight and echo, Mr. Agar. I appreciate all the work he's already doing. He's only been here a month, and I've already had to call him a couple times. So I appreciate his time and his continuing to move forward things that we've been working on for several years now. So I really appreciate that work. And just letting the board know, we're working with them on a few key priority projects. Wagon Trail is definitely a priority project there. Coordinating with them on a shop project that's within the Wagon Trail limits at Cherokee Creek Bridge. So we're trying to work with Caltrans on making sure both projects proceed in line with the goals of the Wagon Trail project and the shop project. So I appreciate his staff's work and coming to the table on that issue. And then Foundry Lane access, I know, is a priority of the cities, and it has been for some time. So we are working with Caltrans on a solution for that and how we move that project forward. So those are two kind of major items I've been working on with Caltrans, and that Mr. Agar is aware of and definitely helping me move those forward. And those are my verbal updates. If the board has any questions on the staff report provided, happy to answer them.
You seem to be juggling a lot of balls here. How do you keep track of them all?
Probably not as many as your public works director or county administrator, so it's our job.
Any council questions? No? Any public questions, comments? Seeing none. Kylie, do you have anything you would like to bring up?
No, I have nothing to report, but I just want to let you know, Amanda did not hear for council reports, so she will report out in CTA.
Okay. All right. All right, our host, Aaron, you have control of everything. Do you have anything to report?
No, I don't, but thank you.
Everything is running smoothly.
We're having some audio roughness, but other than that, it's been great.
Yeah, I think we are having some audio issues. Hopefully this time next month, we'll have them all straightened out. You have a month to work on them. So a lot of dry runs you can do. All right, with that, we will adjourn as the Council of Governments, and we'll...
Chair, excuse me, this is Monica Streeter. Just as point of order, we're not actually adjourning the meeting because we do still have the closed session. We will recess to the CTA and then we'll come back and resume the COG meeting so that the closed session can occur.
Okay. Well, that's what we're going to do. We're going to move on to the CTA meeting and convene as the CTA Transit Agency. And I have it starting at 6:50. Close. All right. I'll call this meeting to order. We have the first item on the agenda is the consent agenda. Consent agenda items are expected to be routine and non-controversial and will be acted upon by the council at one time without discussion. Any council member, staff member, or interested parties may request that an item be removed from the consent agenda for further discussion. This is Government Code 549543A. Is there any council member wish to remove anything from consent? Hearing none, is there any staff member wish to remove any item from consent agenda? No? Is there any public member that wishes to pull an item? I'll give it just a minute in case there's a delay. Hearing none, I'll bring it back to the council. I'm open for a motion for the consent agenda.
Motion.
I have a motion by Justin. Do we have a second?
Second.
A second by who said? Tim, was that you? It was Tim. Okay. I have a motion by Justin and a second by Tim. Call for a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Aye. Yeah, opposed? Hearing none opposed, passes 7-0. We'll move on to the regular agenda. Item number 5 is public comment. It's 5 minutes per person. Comment shall be limited to the items that are within the subject matter jurisdiction of the council and not on the posted agenda. Government Code Section 54954.3A. Is there any public comment? Hearing no public comment, we'll move on to item number 6 on the regular agenda. This is a minute order authorizing implementation of a pilot services to begin on October 6, 2020. And Amber, you're in the spotlight again.
Thank you, Chair. I've tried to rearrange my microphones here so everybody can hear me okay. So the last several meetings, I know the board, we provided some updates on our COVID-19 response and the services that we've been providing, as well as proposed pilot services. So since that time, our proposal is the same. We haven't changed, what we're proposing. We've been working on marketing materials, been doing outreach, working with our social services Transportation Advisory Council, and doing a lot of the legwork to get the services off the ground. So this evening we're bringing to you the action to authorize us to initiate these pilot services starting on October 6th. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions the council has.
Are there any questions by the council members? Hearing none, is there any public questions or comments? Hearing none, I'll bring it back to the council. I'm open for a motion.
This is Tim.
I have a motion by Tim. Do I have a second?
Aye.
We have a second by Justin. I'll call for a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none opposed, passes 7-0. We'll move on to item number 7. This is a presentation by Cliff Chambers on the short-range transit plan, or the SRTP, in the draft service alternatives. Amber, you want to start in and introduce
Sure, I'll
Cliff?
do an introduction if in the meantime, Aaron, if you want to work with Cliff to give him, and be able to share his screen so he can get the PowerPoint up. But in the meantime, in the staff report, I provided the board kind of background on where we're at with the short-range transit plan. It started about a little over a year ago in the process, then COVID happened, so we kind of pivoted to responding to COVID. So, you know, we provided a progress draft which outlines kind of the outreach that we did and needs assessment, which was pre-COVID. And then in our service and draft alternatives, we've incorporated kind of post-COVID scenarios. So we have a number of scenarios that we kind of want to review with the board and talk about different possible service alternatives and an opportunity to get feedback from the board, because I think I feel like I've been talking a lot, and at the last couple of meetings, you know, the board has definitely supported our direction and where we've been headed, but I think this is a good opportunity to kind of get the board's feedback on our direction here. And it looks like Cliff is up and running, and so I'll introduce Cliff Chambers with Mobility Planners. He's the lead consultant on the short-range transit plan update, and will kind of walk us through some of the recommendations and ask the board some questions. Cliff, are you on?
I am. Do you hear me okay?
Yes, sir.
Okay, great. Well, thanks, Amber. I think you did an excellent job of kind of going over some of the pilot projects that are going to be implemented during the COVID-19 era. And I'm here really to kind of talk about what happens after we get through all of this. And so I'm going to be talking about mostly kind of service and fare alternatives, but I really do want to get your input because the service plan really does help to drive eventually what we do with the vehicle replacement plan. So there could be some significant changes, and so the earlier discussion was really helpful to me, because that is going to be the next one of the next steps. So the services that Calaveras Connect is providing has radically changed since we started this project. I know you're all familiar with this, so I won't spend much time, but we are taking this as kind of the base and then going to work from what happens after the pandemic. So Amber distributed kind of a working paper, kind of first 4 chapters of the short-range transit plan. And we've kind of in there proposed some guiding principles in terms of what we want to do kind of longer term that are up here, kind of invest in the resources where there's demonstrated demand, and really provide a diversity of different lifeline services, things like the pilot projects that really are meant to meet basic needs, and then how they develop over time. We want to make sure that there's the coverage and the hours that are provided so you can have a completion of a round trip within a reasonable time. That has not always been the case with some of the services that have been provided. And then we really want to look at, after ridership has been demonstrated that they meet minimum ridership and productivity thresholds, that then we're able to expand, for example, going from 1 day to 2 days of service. And then we really want to look at cost effectiveness thresholds, which I'll be discussing later in this presentation. But I just wanted to get a take from the board. Does this sound generally like a good set of guiding principles to you? Are there any revisions or other suggestions at this point?
Any council comments or questions? Dennis?
I do have some thoughts about the difficulty in getting the message out to the right people in a timely manner. That's going to be one of the hinges to whether or not there's success on this. I can think of the 3 circles off of Feather Drive there in Copperopolis. They're all generally low income, most likely going to be the ones able or capable of using the services of going to Sonora. And if we're not there when they want us to be, or they don't know what the rules of the road are, so to speak, in getting that service delivery done, it may be too frustrating for them to want to even participate. So I just bring that up as a thought here, is how do we be sure that we're getting to the right customer?
It's an excellent point, and Amber has been working with a marketing firm to kind of roll some of these things out. But I think going forward, we can certainly make sure that that is a guiding principle, that the things that are there, that they're adequately communicated, because you're right, it's one of the more difficult things to accomplish as things change, is just people even knowing about it. So good point. Anything else? Okay, great. I'll move on. So before getting into a lot of details, I just want to talk about a little bit of nomenclature in terms of where you're at now, in terms of what are some of the options going forward. There's essentially 7 different types of services, some of which you currently have, some of which you are going to develop, and then there's other things that you really don't have right now. So right now you operate on Route 1, fixed route with route deviations. They can, on demand, within a couple hours, advanced reservations, have route deviations. Most fixed route, fixed schedule services that are operated in rural systems are just that. They don't have the route deviations. And the reason that you've done this over time is that because you have the route deviations that go 3/4 of a mile, you do not have to have ADA paratransit. The trade-off is that the services, if they have to deviate 3/4 of a mile off the route, they can get off schedule unless you have adequate recovery time. So, but ADA paratransit is something that most transit systems have. It's complementary dial-a-ride service, essentially, for people who have a certified disability. The other type of service that you have right now is a zonal public dial-a-ride in the 3 areas that paratransit services is really providing that type of service. But other types of general public dial-a-ride that are operated, for example, right next door in Tuolumne County, is that you can reserve a ride from Columbia to Sonora and go from point A to point B directly. And for right now, if you're going to Arnold and you have to transfer and then go to like Valley Springs on Route 1. And then there's the hybrid services, which is what the pilot in West Point to Jackson will be, where it'll be a dial-a-ride service in Wilseyville, West Point, and then make a few stops, a stop in Pine Grove, which will be a fixed stop, and a stop at Rayleigh's, and then it will distribute the passengers who are on board to wherever they want to go, whether it be a medical appointment or anything else that is in Jackson. So it's really a hybrid service. And then finally, there's a volunteer driver reimbursement program. And they have such a program next door again in Tuolumne, where people are reimbursed for driver. We're not going to talk about that today, but it is in the short-range transit plan as one option. Just before I go forward on any of this, I kind of almost got a sense from earlier discussion. I want to get consensus on see if there's consensus on the following. And then while there are mobility needs that need to be served throughout Calaveras County, most low-density areas cannot be served by 5-day-a-week fixed route service. Instead, different mobility options that I just presented needed to be utilized to really match transit demand levels. Does anybody disagree with this statement? And the reason I'm bringing it up is that historically, Calaveras Connect has had things like the copper route that ran regularly in a very low-density area, but attracted very, very, very little ridership. And I just want to make sure we're all on the same page.
This is John Gomes.
Yes.
I've made comments over the years about the Copperopolis route fundamentally missing the majority of the residential areas down there. And we've talked about potentially changing how they're doing the circle to more of an H pattern, going all the way down Little John, all the way down O'Burns Ferry Road to Poker Flat. And so I don't know if, for people who want to use the transit for work, you need a 5-day-a-week service. So I don't know if I would really completely say I have consensus on this, because you're effectively wiping out anybody who wants to use this service for work. And you're making it specialized for appointments and shopping, going to the government center. But the average worker who has trouble for transportation from Copper to wherever they want to get to in the county is being eliminated with this process.
Not necessarily, because there's many rural areas that have general public dial-a-ride, which you do call on-demand service, but it's open to the general public. It's dial-a-ride service, and workers have subscription service. So every day of the week, they're scheduled to be picked up at 7:30 and delivered to their work site at 8:15, if there's a demand for that. And that's what a general public dial-a-ride will do. So but what it does is it gives a lot more flexibility in low demand areas, because you're not having to run a route, several times a day, a dedicated vehicle. You're really serving where the demand is. So if there's workers in Copperopolis that want to take transit into the service area, a general public dial-a-ride would actually provide them, a potentially higher level of service, because they have that subscription types of service that you can't have. So that's what I mean, though, is that, in some of these lower demand areas, it's economically just very inefficient. So the Copperopolis service right now is about, $95 a trip. And so it's not terribly economic to run it, because there's a dedicated vehicle on a dedicated route. Does that help with an explanation a little bit?
It does, and if this is marketed where the dial-a-ride could be made use for individuals who actually want 5-day-a-week service, I think when I looked through the presentation in advance of the night's meeting, I didn't pick up on that as a concept. Dial-a-ride seemed to be more one-off for appointments and potentially for shopping and that sort of thing. I didn't see the 5-day-a-week worker reach out with the way it's been presented. So
okay, well, we can
explain that.
Yeah, we can clarify that in the report. I mean, dial-a-ride is meant to be open to the general public. Predominantly, most dial-a-ride services are focused on seniors and individuals with disabilities. And the reason I'm calling it the general public dial-a-ride is it's open to everybody, and it's meant to substitute for those services. But certainly we can clarify that in the subsequent draft report. Thank you for the comment. Anybody else? Okay. So the potential routes that really have, sustained viability are really the red and the blue route. The red route before COVID had by far the most ridership, but it operated more frequently. It ran every 90 minutes and had about 4 passengers per hour. The blue route to Arnold actually had the highest productivity, but only had service almost every 3 hours. And then the Saturday Hopper service, which was increasingly popular, had a little over 4 passengers route. In my judgment, these are the ones that really have potential, hopefully, over time to have some kind of fixed route viability. But the purple route to Sutter Creek and Jackson and Moke Hill, Copperopolis, and the green route up country are really not set for really good fixed route services. And so that's why some of these areas were proposed for pilot projects and the demand response or general public dial-a-ride. And again, they can be open for a variety of trip purposes. So I'm going to go just through quickly some alternatives that I'd like to get your reactions to in terms of any kind of preference. I'll go through these fairly quickly. Stop me if you've got any questions on any individual one. The first is basically what we're doing today, which is, whoops, got ahead of myself here, which is the current service that connects Angels Camp and Valley Springs. It's the only fixed route now that is operating. And the reason it's not going out to Columbia College is because the college doesn't have any kind of significant in-person instructions. And I can't stress enough the importance of student ridership historically to Calaveras Connect. When we did the survey in the fall, last fall and last September, we found that 46% of the riders that we surveyed were students, with 35% of those being Columbia College students. And so there is the ability now to take an on-demand service to Columbia College upon request. The second option is really to go back to the way it used to be from Valley Springs to Columbia College, but it did have fairly low productivity at 4 passengers an hour. And just to give you a sense, since I mentioned Tuolumne, right next door, the mainline route there has about 9 passengers an hour. And that's what you'd like to see typically out of a fixed route service to make it cost effective. So once Columbia College does go back to full, and it's an open question of what percentage of their classes will be in person versus online teaching in the long run. As I say, it was a big chunk of your ridership, and so we need to kind of wait and see. And then there is the option to only operate it when Columbia College is in session, if there is good ridership demand out there. But ideally, this red line would operate every 60 minutes, which provides the opportunity for what we call clock headways, so that if you're at Angels Camp at a stop there and it comes every hour at 10 minutes of the hour, you don't have to look at a schedule, you know it's right there, it's posted on the bus stop sign, and it makes it much more convenient for the passengers. They know exactly when to show up and the bus will be there. So that's ultimately the longer range goal, but right now we don't really have the demand to justify it. The third is just to go back to both the red and the blue line as they were before, operating every 90 minutes. There's good transfer opportunities now. This is basically going back to the status quo with the red and the blue line before pre-COVID. And then, whoops. So the fourth scenario is basically because the Arnold to Angels Camp actually had the highest productivity, is just looking at Valley Springs to Arnold and as a single route. So people don't need to transfer. It's a 1-seat ride. The service would be every 2 hours to start. And you could have what we call our tripper runs to the college, so that if you had regular groups of students that had 10 o'clock classes, they sign up in advance, and they could basically be, operate kind of as a shuttle, perhaps 2 or 3 of those in the morning, 2 or 3 in the afternoon. And many systems do that kind of tripper routes. The fifth scenario would be that essentially the buses would alternate between Arnold and Columbia College. This assumes that there's sufficient demand again out at Columbia College, where those 46% of students do return, and that we would, so the way this would work is you have 2 buses on the route, and it would alternate. One would go to Arnold and then back to Valley Springs. The other would go to Columbia College, go back from Columbia College back to Valley Springs. They would just alternate. So that is a concept worth thinking about. And then finally is the scenario that right now demand levels are very low because of COVID. And if those demand levels stay really low, I mean, certainly there is an only operate general public dial-a-ride with no fixed route service. And general public dial-a-ride services, if they're done well, typically have between 2.5 to 4 passengers an hour. And as I say, you really want to have fixed routes like the blue line, like the red line, to have 6 to 8, hopefully 9 passengers an hour is what the goals really would be. So the factors for decision making are, I've talked about the productivity and the ridership, but we want to look at, so right now there's general public dial-a-ride between Arnold and Angels Camp and Angels Camp Columbia College. If those really increase, we consider expanding it. If there's big factor is the degree of on-site instruction, particularly at Columbia College, and how much of that actually returns. And we just don't know how long the lingering fears of COVID-19 exposure over time are going to be, how long that will take to dissipate. And then certainly the other factor is some of the cost effectiveness stuff that I've discussed a little bit earlier. So a few discussion questions, and I think this is important for me to kind of know how to phrase these in the plan itself. Should there be minimum performance standard thresholds that would need to be met before the existing fixed route services are expanded? So you have the red line right now. Is there certain thresholds in the general public dial-a-ride, for example, between Arnold and Angels Camp? If it consistently got 3 passengers an hour, is that the kind of threshold that you want to look for actually expanding it to fixed route? That's what this question is asking. So I'll just stop right there. Is there any comment about that in terms of, do you want to have those kind of thresholds, or you just want to experiment and see what happens?
Cliff, this is Dennis. I think in the short term, we just, all we've got to do is experiment. We don't have enough ridership or enough data to make anything permanent. With
Right.
Columbia College, the issue is the time windows. Were there specific times of the day that were higher in ridership pre-COVID than what we would expect? Or should we be considering the Arnold to Valley Springs run to be the backbone? I think you'd asked that question earlier. To me,
Yeah, so
go ahead.
when there was, we did, and it's in the draft report, when we had the ridership by run for the red line, and there was typically, the 6:30, 7:50, and 9:20 runs had really high, and then in the midday it really fell off, and then in the afternoon it picked up again. And so that was there, and it's just, but that was pre-COVID-19, and again, we just don't know how much of that ridership is going to return.
So until that ridership returns, though, where should we be focusing our effort here?
Well, I think it's important to, I think the reason that when we did this earlier COVID-19 response that recommended the pilot projects that Amber has brought forward to you is to do some experimentation and see if those kind of services work based on the research that we did as part of this plan back last fall. So that is certainly an important, focus. But if you ask me in terms of the focus of the fixed routes, certainly what you have now is a start, but you don't have the student ridership. And, I haven't seen statistics yet in terms of, what the ridership on that leg will be and whether it makes sense to go up to Arnold or not. We do have data in terms of how much ridership is on the general public demand response right now, and unfortunately it's fairly low. It's about 1 passenger per every hour the bus is operating, which is not really high. So I think you are doing the pilot projects are meant to be a certain amount of experimentation. That is an area of focus, and then I don't know when you're going to have sufficient demand to really have enough demand for fixed route. It really is dependent on all those factors that I went through before.
Cliff, I think that we have time right now to experiment in any way we'd like and find out what is plausible and what isn't. We didn't have that latitude before. It was too risky. So, but in coming out of the COVID situation, I think that it would be valuable for us to establish, we know what our backbone is and where those routes really can give us what we need. It's all of those other routes, and I know Mr. Gomes had referred to one, that really create the need to find some alternative way to handle it.
Right. I mean, yeah, so you do have, you do have some data over time when you can monitor in terms of the dial-a-ride. And I'm going to talk about improvements to the dial-a-ride in just a second. And, I think we can, monitor that, and then you can decide. I mean, it's really, you could decide if you don't really want to, you could decide if the Arnold to Valley Springs is something as a fixed route backbone that you want to experiment with. You could try that and see how that works, because the blue line previously had the highest productivity and it only had service every 3 hours. So you can monitor it over time to see whether you're not. So anyways, I think, I think we spent some time on talking about performance standards, but were there any preferences from other board members on any of the particular fixed route scenarios presented?
This is Alvin.
Yes.
I don't think right now to Columbia is in the cards, at least until school opens up, at least for me. When school opens up, that is a great route, and I strongly believe that that's a good thing for our community and our county. But as an experiment, I would say we start the experiment as small as we can, just to save our costs. I would say we do the Valley Springs to Angels Camp, or even we could run the Angels Camp to the Arnold, because you were just saying that is one of our highest riderships from Angels to Arnold, and just start there and see where we get. Or the Valley Springs to Angels, run it for a week and a half, 2 weeks, and see what our ridership numbers are at. And if we hit 6 riders an hour, then maybe we expand and go from, if we're going to do the Valley Springs to Angels and we hit 6 riders an hour, maybe we expand and go from Angels to Arnold and see where that gets us, and come back at the next meeting and let us know. If we didn't hit that 6 riders an hour between Valley Springs and Angels, then we shut it back down. And if we hit those 6 riders an hour, then we expanded to go to Arnold and we hit 9 riders an hour or something like that, if that makes sense.
No, it makes sense. I think it's just right now we're still in COVID-19, and the red line between Valley Springs and Angels Camp did start August 3rd. It's now operating at its regular schedule, and it's too soon to know what the actual ridership of that is. But you could experiment with just going out to Arnold on a fixed route basis and see how that goes. I mean, there's nothing to say you couldn't do it. this discussion, again, remember, is thinking about after COVID-19. We're done with it. So I think, you know, transit nationwide has dropped by usually 70 to 80% in most transit systems. And so we're in kind of a new era. We're really serving mobility lifeline needs you always have here in Calaveras Connect. But I think we're going to have to do a lot of experimentations and see what works and be willing to adjust accordingly. And that's kind of what I'm hearing you say. You want to continue with that kind of experimentation. Okay?
I have a question. This is Amanda. I know we've been focused on Columbia, but with the changes at the two local high schools, which are between Valley Springs and Angels, with Bret Hart being the final stop, and do we have numbers to compare the two high schools and the ridership in that age demographic once those two schools maybe open up? Because Columbia is run on a different program, and if the state system is going to be closed longer than the local schools, I don't want to miss out the younger demographic if they need that, especially if the parents don't want them going on the school buses. Not that it would be any different, but if they prefer that their kids are on this versus the school buses. Yeah. Or if they limit school buses and when coming and going, if they only go back part-time as well.
We did have, when we did this survey in last fall, we did have high school riders on the bus. It was just a handful that we actually surveyed. And we could certainly do some monitoring when it does come back fully to monitor. But it is, in most transit systems like this, I didn't mean to skip over to talk about Columbia College. It was just the extension there. The two high schools, as you say, I mean, are important markets, and they haven't been as well utilized here as they have been in other communities, and we're not really sure why. And part of it may be just getting the information and people really trying it. Part of it is it's service every 90 minutes. As I said, if you did it more frequently, you're going to get more riders. Those clock headways where you know it's at the school at 10 after the hour, you be dropped off at 10 minutes before bell time, and then 10 minutes, so those things really make a difference. So they are important markets, and we certainly will continue to consider that. Thank you. Any other comments?
This is Gary. I have a couple comments.
Okay.
The blue line, I think, I don't have any data in front of me, but it was successful, I believe, because of the high school. Kids from Arnold and going through Murphy's and picking up and taking them to the high school in Angels Camp.
Gary, I'm having trouble hearing you. You're going in and out. I'm sorry.
I said, do we have any data on the blue line? You said it was it was one of the highest ridden lines that we had. And I'm kind of suspect that you're getting back to the high school, that line was successful because it was being used for the high school from anywhere from Arnold to Murphy's down to Angels Camp to go to the high school. Yeah. So that was... Yeah,
there was some ridership from that to the high school, not a lot. But again, I mean, we did a survey and we did less than 100 passengers. So there's not a lot of individuals that were using it to survey. But I think it is a good potential continue market along, the blue line.
I don't think, I believe it is too, but you're talking about moving the red line. We're just talking about moving the red line from Valley Springs and expanding it up to Arnold. One, I don't know what that's going to do to frequency and times that it's running now. It will certainly add to the time frame going that far. I think if we were going to do that, and I certainly, when Columbia is not, even if we go forward after the pandemic and when Columbia is not in session, I think the red line could at least go from Valley Springs to Murphy's and back. and not quite to Arnold, and you still keep the blue line from Angels Camp to Arnold at the same time. And then you would cut out any transferring that might happen other than people in Angels Camp transferring from the blue line that want to go to Valley Springs area. But I would, if we're going to do any experimenting, instead of going all the way at the beginning of the experiment to Arnold, I'd see what the ridership, if it increases from Valley Springs to Murphy's first.
Okay.
And that would lower the time frame for the trips. And if we are successful and we increase ridership and we find that people are telling the drivers that they would like to go to Arnold, then we could at least look at Valley Springs to Arnold.
Okay. I think that's the kind of, I think that's good thinking in terms of the progression first to Murphy's and then look at it and see how that works and then extend it. I think that's a very good suggestion. Any other thoughts? Those are really good points. Thank you. Anything else before I move on? This is very helpful to me. Thank you. Let's talk about the Saturday Hopper service quickly. This was really an increasingly popular service, and it really was popular, I think, because it did have the consistency of an hourly service and the partnership with Ironstone Vineyards. And from looking at the numbers, it seemed like it was really taking off in this spring. If COVID-19 hadn't hit, I think would even have had significantly higher ridership. So I think it's been a very successful introduction, and it's got reasonable ridership and reasonable productivity. And obviously it was suspended. Our thinking right now is that it probably can't really return until all the shelter in place and the social distancing and everything else is lifted, and that happens in stage 4. And then during our outreach, the town center in Copperopolis asked for the extension of the Saturday Hopper service when the new hotel is completed. I just wanted to ask, is there anything that you'd like to see in this plan for improvements to that Saturday Hopper services? Anything additional types of improvements that you'd like to see?
Cliff, this is Dennis again. Yeah, the hotel is scheduled to be completed this year down in Copperopolis. I just wonder what other opportunities people might be looking for from Wyndham Resorts or some of these other locations besides the wine and tasting. Do they want to go up to Big Trees? I remember one time we had a ski bus.
We did.
That went all the way up to Bear Valley. We should be looking at what other recreational opportunities do people want to participate in while they're here besides simply just the wineries.
Yeah, we did not hear that. I did not hear that in the outreach that we had. That doesn't mean that the demand for it doesn't exist, and something that certainly in future follow-up surveys of passengers, and we really went after COVID-19 when we can actually do another survey of Saturday Hopper type services, that we could ask those questions in terms of the riders, in terms of other destinations that they would like to go to and see, and again, experiment with some possible extensions. But again, it's just a matter of resources. Resources are finite, and it's really up to the board to make a decision in terms of how you want to allocate those resources. Anything else on the Saturday Hopper? That was a good suggestion. Okay, I will move on here. So the general public downride, right now has, as I said, it's June of 2020 overall along the 3 zones, really had about 1 passenger for every hour the vehicle was in service for boardings of passengers, which is not surprising given COVID-19. It does it requires 1 day in advance with some day request on space available basis. There may be a need to look at, instead of doing a zonal dial ride, to really look, for example, the earlier talking about from Copperopolis, a work trip. You really might want to go to a system that really provides service of dial ride from, you know, X to Y directly, instead of having just being in zones and then having to transfer buses, which makes it less convenient. Since the ridership levels are quite low, it's something that we're looking at and talking with paratransit services about. And in part, that is, and I think Amber said she's talked to you already about including in the budget for some new dispatching software, so I won't spend much time on here, but the software and the technology available is quite good and really does provide optimizing driver schedules based on people who make reservations the day before and then being able to fit people in who call the same day to optimize the routes and improve the productivity. So that is already underway, and we're looking at that, and that will be certainly a potential improvement for that. And then really looking at the coordination between the general public dial ride and the fixed routes, so that if you wanted to take a trip from Angels Camp to Jackson's Rayleigh, that right now how it works is that the red line will take you and you could transfer to go to the final destinations, and the dial ride needs to be coordinated so that it's a very seamless trip for the passenger, that they get off the fixed route and right onto the dial-a-ride bus. And so that's something that we'll really want to be working on. So for the dial-a-ride portion of the trip, passengers really need to make reservations up to 7 days in advance or the previous day the trip is needed. And with all of these, same-day requests can be made, but it's only on a space available basis. So the pilot projects are really, you're going to be experimenting with 4 different types of pilot projects. And these were crafted in concert with Amber based on the market research that we did last fall, all the stakeholder interviews that we did, etc. And, for example, we were out West Point, had a lot of intercept surveys. The whole route and whole concept was based on that outreach and input that we got from the community out in Wilseyville and West Point. So I feel like it has a reasonably good chance, at least we heard from the residents out there, that this is something that they really would like to see. So we'll see. We're going to put it out there and see what kind of ridership that we're able to get. So there's 4 different of these, and there's right now during COVID, there's only going to be 4 passengers maximum aboard the bus, but I think over time after COVID, the ability to that if a waiting list. So for example, I just mentioned the West Point service. So if we had a really good launch of this for people really wanting to go, for a lot of demand to go to Jackson, to Rayleigh, to the grocery store, for example, and if you had a waiting list that you could only accommodate a certain amount of people, we would really add a second day of the week. That's the kind of progression based on demonstrated demand that we'd really like to see, to put it out there, as we talked about earlier, making sure that the community really knows about it. I think there's going to be a postcard sent to residents out in various areas that are to every household that's going to get information about these things. So I think there will be good information, and we'll really publicize it, and then if indeed get these kind of responses, we can expand. So I'm not going to go all through all the demand thresholds, but I just wanted to give you an example of, earlier I talked about productivity and demand thresholds. So, for example, you know, even within Angels Camp right now, you want to go from point A to point B within Angels Camp. You can use the dial-a-ride if you have a regular work trip or shopping trip, you know, some sort of, you know, any type of trip that you can make right within Angels Camp, or you can use it for Copperopolis to Angels Camp or Angels Camp to Copperopolis. But anyways, if we get 15 passenger trips a day on the one-day service, that's the kind of thing we would do. We consider then adding a second day. And then for 1 day a week pilot programs, but we want to have some threshold that we just don't continue these services for a very, very long time. And I want to get your input on that in terms of, you know, I set here an average of 4 passenger trips per day over a 3-month period. For example, going back to the example that I used at Wilseyville, West Point, if we don't get, you know, passenger, I mean, at what point do you kind of pull the plug? So that kind of is a segue into this discussion of the pilot program. I mean, do you agree with a waiting list threshold for adding a second day of service? And do you agree with monitoring and having some kind of minimum ridership performance standard? And I didn't write this, but I think over what period of time? And if anybody has any comments on any of that, it would be helpful to know so that we can include it in the draft of the short-range transit plan. Any comments?
I think that's a good thing to do. You know, kind of base it off how well it's performing, and then if we have to add another day, we add another day. If it's not, then we don't do it anymore. I mean,
so
I'm not really sure how long. Maybe 2 months. I'm not really sure how the time aspect of it would be.
Yeah, I think originally, you know, I think you want to give it at least a 6-month shot.
Okay.
And then you can kind of see how it goes. Because it takes a while, as we talked about earlier, for the word to get out. And for places like Wilseyville, Mountain Ranch, others, even Copperopolis, word of mouth, even at the 3 circles in Copperopolis, the word of mouth. If people are going to use it, they've said they've tried it, it really worked well. They talk to their neighbors. It takes time for it to develop. So I would say probably a minimum, if you're asking my suggestion, at least a minimum of 6 months and then see, or even 6 to 9, even to a year. So, but I want your input. So that was helpful. Anybody else? Anybody else have any comments on that? Okay. All right, I'm going to quickly finalize here and talk about fares. As you know, there's a free fare pilot program that you approved at your last board meeting till June of 2021. And then historically, as you know, we've had fare box recovery requirements to meet 10% of the fares compared to costs. And I guess the big question is, when should fares be established? There's these considerations. First, the affordability. 48%, when we did the survey in September, 48% of the passengers had incomes, household incomes, of less than $15,000 a year, and another 22% had incomes below $25,000. So it's a very low income, living on the edge type of population that's riding the buses. And the fare revenues right now are a declining share of fare boxes. When you take the fare revenues that are actually collected in the fare box, divided by the cost, it's about 6.7%. And to get up above 10%, where now the state legislation has allowed you to include local income like advertising, asset sale of vehicles, interest incomes, things like that that are derived locally, you can include in the calculation. And then the other consideration is that there is a task force that may be legislation, and I emphasize may, to reduce the ratio from 10% to 7.5% and then eliminate the penalties that used to have, if you didn't make the fare box recovery, there was a penalty that you incurred, and that may be eliminated. So, you know, some systems are now really starting to think about, you know, do we really go back to fares? Do we want to have free fares? Those are implemented, you know, in many universities, community college, in tourist areas. I've done work in several of those. The ridership is really high compared to other comparable systems with fares. It really eliminates the need for fare collection and all the controls and counting and accounting for fare revenues that really cost almost as much as you get in the fare revenues. And then the final thing is that fares only represent a small percentage of revenues. My discussion question is, given the very low income circumstances of existing riders, if you could eliminate fares, would this be desirable? Why or why not?
This is John Gomes.
Yeah.
I'd like to suggest that as long as we have the CARES Act money currently funding us through, it sounds like June of 2021, if it can keep us moving the buses as we are, plus fund the pilot programs that you're proposing, you know, I would say let's maximize the use of the CARES funds and do the best we can for our ridership to try and get it back and available. We have no idea yet on ridership itself because of this COVID about even limitations where we're running a, you know, Freightliner bus and you can only put 4 or 6 people in it. It's never going to be an efficient means to move a lot of people. So I think if we can reach out and at least try and get to the maximum usage of the bus before we start thinking about charging fares, that's the best we can do for our constituency right now.
Okay. Any other comments?
Justin Catalano, if we could eliminate fares, I would be with that. I would agree with that.
Okay.
You know, public transportation, it's a service for the people, and that's doing a good service for the people. And if the people riding our transit don't really have the funds to make ends meet, why are we giving them an additional burden? I mean, if you know, obviously this is not a business that's in it to make money. So if we could give that to people, especially in a time of need, it could look favorably on the long term of the reputation for the county and the, you know, the transit system.
Okay. Good comment. Anybody else?
Yeah, this is Tim. I would agree for the time being with both John and Justin that with 70% of your ridership below the poverty line, leave things the way they are.
Okay. So leave them where they are at least through 2021. But what beyond? Are you talking beyond? I mean, I think Justin was talking about if you could beyond 2021. Tim, are you saying beyond 2021 too?
I think there's going to come a point when we have to look at the fact that there has to be some sort of contribution from the ridership.
Okay.
I mean, we struggled years ago. We were struggling terribly with fare box recovery and, you know, threats of penalties and this and that. So, yeah. Okay.
Well, there's a lot, as you know. There's right now the funding sources. So, you know, you're using actually the LC top money, I believe, Amber, to offset the fares during this period of time. So there are some other options that would cover the fares. But, you know, some people feel it's important that the passengers contribute. I hear that. So I think that's what I'm hearing you say. It is at some point, at some level. Now, if we do this, if fares, we need to go back to fares. Would you want to go to $2 as the general base fare, or would you want to bring it back to $1 per trip?
If we could meet the requirements of either fare box ratio or however things change in 21, 22 with $1 per trip. You know, let's do $1 per trip.
This is Alvin. I'm in the same boat as what John just said. If we can do it for $1 chip, then we do it. Okay. This has been extremely helpful. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. I'm sure Amber feels the same way. You've provided really good, input, and so thank you very, very much. And I'm done. I think I've got the input. Did you want to add anything, Amber?
No, I don't think I have anything additional to add unless the council has any questions. We'll bring back a draft of the SRTP that will incorporate kind of this discussion. And
I'm going to stop sharing my screen now then. Thank you.
Is there any public comments on this item? Hearing none. This was an informational item, so we will move on to item number 8. Item number 8 is the minute order approving the Calaveras Transit Agency's policies and procedures. It says Kylie.
All right. Approving Calaveras Transit Agency policies and procedure. It took staff about a year to go through the process and document the policies and procedures that we do follow. It helps document how we operate, our funding mechanisms, and our major functions as a transit agency.
Is there any questions?
Yes, I do have one. In looking at this, is there a defined statement on how often the manual, the POP, will be reviewed? How often you would review and update the manual?
We haven't set a time, but it would be at least annually, I would think.
Well, I'm
Whenever
thinking
anything changes, basically, we will have to.
when everything changes,
Yeah,
when
it's a
things
living
change.
document, so when things change, we'll have to change the policies and procedures.
Most organizations try to redo them every 5 years. And it would be up to you to decide, or the board to decide when would be appropriate for that, but I just didn't see anything in here indicating a time window.
yeah, I don't think we didn't define it in there. Just from experience with the COG policy and procedures, we typically bring some, amendments to that as needed on about an annual basis, really, when things change and state legislation or laws or our funding mechanisms change. So, yeah, we'll probably be bringing more amendments than once every 5 years.
Well, I don't want to see it like some county ordinances that go back to 1974 or something like that, to where we just build a manual and then put it on a shelf and don't think about it anymore.
But we'd be happy to add a statement in there. And
just some statement indicating.
Like, at least every 5 years? Is that?
Well, no, just some statement indicating what the priority would cause or drive a decision to want to revise.
Okay.
It doesn't have to be a time window, just simply, this is what drives the revision.
Okay.
My comment would say just put it in there when it changes, if there's changes that need to be made to it, or every 2 years,
So you
whichever.
want a time, so you're thinking a time window.
Because that way it won't end up on a shelf.
Good point, good point.
So that would be my comment.
I would agree with that.
Is there any other comments?
Yeah, this is John Grimes. When we first talked about forming the independent Calaveras Transit Agency and just have it be a parallel of the COG board, there was some brief discussion about the remuneration for the board members of the transit agency, also paralleling with the COG received. At the time, that comment was shelved as the finances were pretty unclear. We didn't know where we were going to land with it. Now that we've gotten into a rather regular board process, we had 180-page agendas for both the COG and the transit agency tonight. And I get that both agencies at different times of the year have different levels of effort to attend a board meeting. But the reality is it is an independent board. It is a separate agenda, a separate entity to put the effort and time into. And so I just want to throw it out there. I didn't see anything in here paralleling the COG policies and procedures regarding board remuneration.
And I think, are we referring
Well,
to?
are you, well, just to be clear, John, on what you're saying, we are an independent board separate from COG. That's why we have to convene separately. But from what I hear you're saying, the possibility is at some point to explore that CTA would meet outside the realm of COG, like separate times and days of the month, instead of having the same meeting the same day COG does, like we do now?
What I am saying is, as it is an independent board with an independent agenda, and at times of the year, it has actually had agenda packages that took more effort and preliminary work than even a regular COG meeting. To me, I think when we first started this, we didn't think that initially we knew there'd be a heavy lift because it was a new agency, and then we thought everything would just kind of settle down and be more like a subcommittee or an ad hoc committee per se of the COG board. But the reality has turned out that I think, at least from what I'm seeing, that there are times in the year, and certainly with these uncertain times of COVID, a significant level of effort, even if the meeting itself is concurrent or surrounding the standard COG meeting. I think a placeholder, even if it's, 50% of what, we get $50 for the COG meeting, get $25 for the transit meeting, it would at least give us a little bit to make it worth a thank you to the COG board or the transit board members to put forth the preliminary effort of studying the agenda ahead of time, maybe putting forth that extra effort of looking up for articles or other things that would benefit the transit system in our county, as those board remuneration practices are meant to be. So not seeing a placeholder in it at all, I just wanted to bring it up as a point that, if this is the policies and procedures of the transit agency, regardless of whether the meeting is on the same night, at the same time, surrounding the COG meeting, or moves somewhere else, that would be a board level decision down the road. I think the remuneration question is something that, on a policy and procedures manual, it's an appropriate time to bring it up.
How the rest of the council feel?
I would have to agree with that. I kind of felt that way from the jump. And, even tonight's meeting just reflects how important it is to have some type of incentives, whether, for the, the time and effort that the people of this board represent. To go back to the comment about looking over the policies and procedures, I mean, that's an ongoing thing. I don't think you need to have any type of statement in there that it's a requirement to go over anything. When, something needs to be changed, they put an amendment in and we vote on it. And, if it seems adequate, we approve that. So, but the compensation probably should be in there, and it should kind of, it has its own set of rules and regulations separate from the COG, and it looks pretty good regardless.
Anyone else?
Yes, Tim?
Yes, Tim.
I was sitting here feeling kind of guilty for collecting money when I'm sitting in Zoom meetings in my living room instead of driving down to the chambers. So.
I'll tell you what, we can look into it. I'm not sure what the JPA says. I'm not sure what COG's JPA, if the compensation is written into that, how it came about, what's going on. How about if we do some look at it and maybe have a discussion at our next CTA meeting about it, when we have a little bit more information on how and what and where and the money could come from, if it's within the JPA's structure, and some going forward, talking to council, either county council and city council. So we're not threading somewhere where we shouldn't be threading. Since it's been brought up, though, I think we should investigate it and see. Does that
This
fit
is
within
Alvin.
the
I think
scope,
that's a good
John?
idea.
John, does that fit within the scope of what you might be thinking?
Yeah, that's fine. I just was, since we're talking about policies and procedures, and it seemed like this was going to be a document that might be, cemented down for, 6 months to a year before we look at it again, this seemed to be the venue or the avenue with which that discussion should be held too.
Justin, that work?
Oh, yeah, yes, absolutely, and maybe that would be one of our first amendments to this, policies and procedures, if that was the case,
Okay.
Like I said, it's an ongoing thing as being that this just is brand new, and everything is brand new with different things happening in the world and economies. We're gonna have to manipulate it at some point in time. So as long as we're open to making amendments, that's all that's part of the process. And I'm with that.
Any other comments on anything in this item? I have one comment. Under 1.01, administrative staff, executive director. The executive director of the COG will also serve as the executive director of the Calaveras Transit Agency and assume such other duties and responsibilities as the CTA board may direct, including, but not limited to, the execution of agency documents and contracts when so authorized by a resolution of the board. It's the very last sentence I have an issue with, because I don't know, it's just out there. And then that's a period there, and then it says, other employees may be hired from time to time as required. Is that supposed to say that the executive director may hire employees from time to time as required, or has the authority to hire employees from time to time, or just the board is going to hire other employees to do your job for you?
Yeah, I think it's a good point, and I think that statement comes from our JPA that was created for the transit agency that said the CTA board, has the authority to, if we needed to hire employees of the CTA, we would do that. So you're right, it kind of just hangs out there, and it doesn't really specify that the board has the authority to.
So we can, under executive director, we can just scratch that last sentence off of there?
Yeah, since it's in our JPA, and that sentence is stated in our JPA.
That's what I was going to propose.
It's safe to.
Okay. Does everybody see that and agree with that?
That sounds appropriate.
Okay. That's all I had. I read, it looks pretty standard, the rest of it.
Yeah.
That's the only comment I had. Are there any public comments on this item? Hearing none, I'm open for a motion.
This is Tim, so moved.
A motion by Tim. Do I have a second?
This is Alvin. I'll second.
I have a second by Alvin. I'll call for a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none opposed, it passes 7-0. Moving on to item number 9, this is the Parrot Transit Services Operation Contractors Report.
Hi there, can you all hear me?
Yes.
Oh, very good. Hi, Cynthia Lawrence, Fair Transit Services, General Manager for Calaveras Connect Transit Operations. So just some highlights on our report this month. We're still continuing our safety milestones, preventable accident-free driving. We're going to celebrate on September 12th. We're all going to go out to lunch, and I'm going to have awards and whatnot for everybody. So we're really excited about that piece. We did start our grocery delivery service, and I am happy to announce that we have delivered two groceries, or sets of groceries. Shadow Oaks Mobile Home Park. They're very interested over there, and they utilize Treats store. So it's sort of an exciting time for us with that. We're waiting to see what else may happen with the Marval and Angels Camp grocery store as well. A few other items. Let's see, I got lost there. The bus shelter lighting project, it's going to start the week of September 7th, which is just next week. And that should be completed in 3 days' time. So by the end of next week, everything will be updated and in time for, when our sun starts setting a little earlier, we'll have lots of light out there. The other is our new team member, Jeff, our maintenance manager. He decided to retire. And so we were lucky enough to find a gentleman named George Campbell, and he is a local from Valley Springs area. He's been out here for over 15 years. And George brings 20 years experience as a heavy equipment mechanic. He's been a shop foreman, and he understands fleet management. He's also an amateur radio volunteer, so that'll be real helpful during our disaster times if we have another fire, unfortunately, hopefully never. We will have someone in-house that understands that now. And George is really thankful to be here with Paratransit, and we're quite thankful to have found him. But that's about all I have for this evening. Have any questions?
Any questions?
I know it's been a long couple meetings.
Is there any public questions or comments? Seeing none, Cynthia, thank you for your report. We'll move on to item number 10, staff reports. Amber says executive report, and there's a cover page, but there's nothing behind it. So, you have anything to add to it?
Sure, I have about a 30-minute presentation.
What?
For those of you on Zoom, I'm joking.
We have a closed session, don't forget.
Yeah. No, just really quick on the CARES Act funds. We have received the check in the mail of $480,000 for the first phase of CARES Act funds. We're really excited about that. That will get us through from January 20th through maybe about the next month. And again, like the board knows, that's allowed us to put money in reserve for this next year. It's also allowing us to give the city and county some excess LTF this year. So we're all very happy about that. And then we've applied for the second phase of CARES Act funds as we've budgeted for fiscal year 21-22. And that's my update.
Any questions? Check is in the mail, huh?
Well, we received the check of the first one. The second one, it's a process.
Okay. Kylie, you have a report?
Nothing. I have nothing for you.
Nothing. Okay, Kylie, nothing. All right, Aaron, it's up to you. Last word.
I don't have anything myself to ask. I just want to double check with Amanda, who missed making comments at COG, if she still had comments.
I'm okay, thank you.
Okay. Other than that, I don't have anything.
Okay. All right. Well, with that, we move to item number 11, adjournment. The next scheduled meeting of the CTA is October 7th, 2020 at 5:30 p.m. Hopefully we'll all be in these chambers at that time. With that, we stand adjourned as the CTA.